I was halfway down the block when I saw it. A moving truck, parked right in front of my house. My house. At first, I thought maybe someone on the street was moving in or out. But something inside me twisted when I saw the front door wide open and a man I didn't recognize walking out with my mother's antique rocking chair in his arms. That chair had been in our family for 3 generations. I slammed the brakes and pulled over so fast my tire screeched. My heart was already pounding. I stared, hoping this was some mistake, some misunderstanding. But then I saw the "For Sale, Sold" sign half buried in the lawn, tilted, crooked, as if someone had carelessly pushed it down after the ink had dried. I felt cold, not just shocked, violated. How could this be happening? I jumped out of my car and practically ran toward the house, calling out, "Excuse me, what are you doing? What is going on here?" The man looked up, startled. Hey there. Are you Emma?" I froze. "Yes, I'm Emma. This is my house." He paused awkwardly, shifting his weight. I just bought it last week. Got the keys from the real estate attorney yesterday." His words were like blunt knives, sloppy and brutal. "No, you didn't," I said, my voice cracking. "This is my family home. My parents live here. You must have the wrong place." He scratched his head. "Sorry, but they don't anymore. They moved out last night. Said you weren't living here, and it was just being sold as is." My stomach dropped. Last night? My parents moved out last night. Without calling me? Without even sending a message? I didn't even know they were thinking of selling the house. This house was my everything. It was where I was raised, where I had my first sleepover, my first heartbreak, where I buried my dog Max in the backyard beneath the lilac tree and carved my name into the oak banister of the staircase with a safety pin when I was 8. And now it was gone? I walked into the house like a ghost. My voice trembled as I said, I need to look around. I don't understand." He didn't stop me. I think he felt sorry for me. But I didn't care. I needed to see for myself what they'd done. The living room was hollow, empty of furniture, but full of memories. I could still see the outline of the rug that used to sit beneath our coffee table, the slight discoloration on the wall where our family portrait used to hang. Gone. I stumbled toward the hallway. My bedroom door was half open. The posters I had taped there in high school were gone. Inside, the walls were bare, and the scent that always reminded me of vanilla candles and rain was replaced by cardboard and dust. I blinked rapidly, forcing the tears back. I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and called my mom. Straight to voicemail. Then my dad. Also voicemail. I texted them both. "What the hell is going on? Why didn't you tell me the house was sold?" No response. Just like that, I was a stranger to the place I once called home. It wasn't just about the physical house. It was about everything it represented. My childhood. The life I thought I had. The trust one placed in my parents to at least tell me before they made such a huge decision. We weren't rich. Far from it. But that home was ours. A fixer-upper my dad bought when I was 5, and we all worked together every summer to patch it up. My mom grew marigolds along the fence every spring. Dad built me a tree house when I turned 9. They knew what that house meant to me. They knew I wanted it. That I had planned to buy it from them in a couple years once I got my promotion. But they didn't wait. They didn't ask. They just took it from me. Sold it behind my back. To a stranger. And vanished. That night, I drove back to my apartment in a fog. I left 5 more voicemails. No reply. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I couldn't focus. I replayed every conversation I'd had with them in the past 6 months. Had there been signs? Hints? Last time I called, Dad was distracted. Said something about downsizing. Mom had laughed nervously when I brought up the idea of me moving back in temporarily. Was this why? Was it guilt? Or was it something worse? I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, heart pounding, ears ringing. I thought of the last thing my brother Ryan said to me before he moved to Seattle 5 years ago. "One day, you're going to realize they're not who you think they are." At the time, I dismissed it, thought it was his way of being dramatic.
But now,
I wasn't so sure. Why hadn't they told me? What were they hiding? And who had convinced them to sell? The next morning, I drove straight to the realtor's office. My name still matched the old address on my ID. Maybe I could bluff my way into some answers. The receptionist was a young woman with a tired smile. I told her I was here to finalize some paperwork for 1126 Alder Street. Oh, she said, glancing at her screen. That closed last Friday. The paperwork was completed through Mr. and Mrs. Collins' attorney. They signed power of attorney documents weeks ago. Wait, weeks ago? I asked, my chest tightening. Did they mention a daughter? She hesitated. I don't have that information. The sale was listed as urgent. Confidential, actually. I only saw the basics. Urgent. Confidential. Something was very wrong. I thanked her and left. When I got back to my car, there was a message on my phone. Not from Mom. Not from Dad. But from a blocked number. Stop asking questions. It's done. That's when I knew this wasn't just a bad decision. This was deliberate. Someone didn't want me to know the truth. And they were willing to erase me from my own past to hide it. The message stayed on my screen like a bruise. Stop asking questions. It's done. No name. No sender. No explanation. I read it over and over again, hoping I missed something. A clue. A number. Anything. Nothing. I didn't delete it. I screenshotted it and forwarded it to myself, just in case it disappeared. But who was this? Who had access to my number? Who even knew I was investigating? Unless my parents. Did they block me? Were they trying to cut me out completely?
no.
That didn't feel like them. At least, not the version of them I thought I knew. But what if I was wrong? I opened my laptop that night, 100 questions swarming in my mind, and started digging. I began with public records. The sale of the property had gone through 2 weeks ago. Listed under a company, Elmsworth Holdings, LLC. I'd never heard of it. No website, no local presence, just a post office box in an upscale suburb an hour out of town. I searched again. And again. Still nothing. It wasn't the buyer I was really interested in, it was my parents. I had to understand why. Why would they sell everything and not tell me? And why in such a hurry? I called my Aunt Martha in Florida. She and my mom had been close growing up, even if they barely saw each other these days. She picked up after the third ring. Emma, sweetheart. It's been ages. Aunt Martha, sorry for calling out of the blue, but did my parents tell you anything about selling the house? There was a pause on the other end. Then, oh, you don't know? I sat up straighter. Don't know what? They said you were in on it. That it was your idea. That you were tired of the old place. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's a lie, I said quietly. I had no idea they were planning this. Martha made a soft sound. Oh, honey, they said you'd moved on. That you wanted no part of that life anymore. Tears welled in my eyes, not because I was surprised, but because this was intentional. They lied to you, I said. I love that house. Aunt Martha's voice dropped. Emma, your dad said something strange last time we talked. He said, the past is getting too heavy. It's time we unburden ourselves. I thought he was just being dramatic. But now, I wonder. The phrase unburden ourselves wouldn't leave me alone. What were they unburdening? What did that house represent that was so dark they had to get rid of it and lie about me in the process? 3 days passed. No responses to my calls, my texts, until I got another message. Same blocked number. You're not going to find peace digging in graves. This time, I did panic. I didn't even tell anyone I was investigating. So how did they know? Unless they were watching me. I checked my apartment for cameras. Paranoia made my chest tight. I unplugged my Alexa, closed every curtain, turned off location services. Still, I didn't stop. I decided to go back to the only place that might still have answers. The house. It was late, past midnight. I parked 2 streets away and walked quietly under the cover of darkness. The neighborhood was quiet. I felt like a criminal creeping through my own childhood block. The lights in the house were off. Good. I slid through the gate along the side. Dad had never fixed the latch, and apparently, the new owner hadn't either. I walked to the backyard. The lilac tree was still there, towering and silent in the moonlight. Max's grave was still beneath it. I dropped to my knees and just sat there. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe comfort. Maybe a sign. Then, I heard a noise. A rustle from the basement. My breath caught. I stayed frozen. Then, again, another sound. A soft, dragging sound. I crept toward the back basement door. It was slightly ajar. I pushed it open and paused. Inside, in the half-lit space, were boxes. Old ones. Labeled with my name. With Ryan's name. With dates going back over 20 years. They hadn't taken everything. They had left our lives in here, like trash. I stepped in slowly, flipping on the old pull chain light. My breath misted. The air was cold and damp. I opened the box marked 1999 Emma. Inside, drawings. Report cards. A photo of me on the first day of kindergarten, holding Dad's hand. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A journal. My old one. The one I lost when I was 12. I opened it, flipping through the pages quickly. Then stopped. One entry had been circled in red ink. I think something bad happened in the basement. I heard Mommy crying, and Daddy said if I told anyone, we'd all be taken away. I stared at the words. The scrawl of a child. Forgotten by time until now. What the hell happened? What had I forgotten? Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me. Didn't I tell you to stop digging? I turned sharply. A figure in the doorway. My father. His face was pale, shadowed by the dim light. His voice was cold. You shouldn't be here, he said. My heart raced. What is going on? I asked. Why did you sell the house? Why did you lie to me? He didn't answer. He just looked at the box in my hands. You found the journal, he said. I stepped back. What happened here? What were you trying to hide? His jaw clenched. You don't want to remember. Trust me. I stared at him, tears stinging. Try me. He stepped forward, and for the first time, I saw guilt. And fear. I thought I could protect you from it, he said. We did what we had to do. For the family. You and Ryan were just kids. My voice shook. Protect us from what? He looked down. Then, without another word, he turned and left. I stood in the silence, holding that journal, heart thudding like a war drum. I didn't know what I'd just uncovered. But whatever it was just the beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. Not after what happened in the basement. Not after seeing my father's face, that haunted look he gave me before he vanished back into the dark like a ghost. The journal was clutched to my chest like a lifeline. I stayed up rereading that single entry a dozen times. I think something bad happened in the basement. I heard Mommy crying, and Daddy said if I told anyone, we'd all be taken away. What did that even mean? Taken away by who? I had always chalked up my childhood weirdness to quirks, like Mom crying for no reason, or how the basement was always off limits. But now, with that journal and the look on Dad's face, everything felt different. My memories felt unreliable, like they'd been polished over, dulled with time and intention. So I did the only thing I could. I started digging deeper. The next morning, I drove to the local library to access microfilm records. They still had old newspaper clippings from before digital archives took over. If something had happened in our neighborhood, anything worth burying, there'd be a trace. Hour after hour passed as I combed through stories. Petty crimes. High school achievements. Missing pets. Then, I found it. A small article, dated July 16th, 1999. Local child falls down basement stairs. No charges filed. The story was brief. Dry. A child named Kendra Smith, age 5, was found unconscious at the bottom of a basement stairwell. She was rushed to county medical, no signs of foul play, but with a fractured skull and multiple bruises. The address listed? Ours. I froze. How had I never heard of this? And then it hit me.
Kendra.
That name. I remembered it in flashes, blonde hair, giggles, chalk drawings on the driveway. She was our neighbor's daughter. But she used to come over. I did remember. And then she stopped.
Suddenly.
No goodbye. I thought her family had moved away. But they hadn't. They were still in town. I looked them up on Facebook. Her mother still lived here.
Carol Smith.
My hands trembled as I sent her a message. I wasn't sure what to say. Hi, Carol. This is Emma Harris, from the house on Green Elm Drive. I know this is sudden, but I have a question about something from a long time ago. Do you have a moment to talk? It felt like a long shot. But 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. She responded. I've been waiting for this message for 20 years. We met that afternoon at a coffee shop near the edge of town. Carol Smith looked older, thinner, her eyes sunken like someone who had cried every day for decades. When I sat down, she studied me like I was a ghost. You look just like her, she said. Like who? I asked, confused. She stared harder. Like the girl I saw on the stairs with my daughter. My mouth went dry. You saw me? Carol nodded slowly. I came to pick Kendra up that day. Your mom told me she had already gone home. But I hadn't seen her. I went to the side door to check, and I saw 2 kids on the stairwell. You and Kendra.
You were holding something.
I didn't know what it was. But I saw Kendra take a step, and then she looked away, choking on the memory. She fell. I shook my head. But she survived, right? Carol nodded again.
She lived.
But she was never the same. Head trauma, memory problems, behavioral shifts. She never went back to school. And your parents, they begged me not to press charges. They said it was an accident, that it wasn't your fault. Was it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Carol looked into my eyes. I don't know. I don't think you meant it. But Emma, you were holding something. Something heavy. I stumbled out of that meeting with my head spinning. I couldn't process it. Had I hurt someone? Had I pushed her?
No.
That couldn't be right. I was just a kid, right? But then, why would my parents lie? Why would they sell the house in secret? Why did they erase everything? The guilt sat in my stomach like acid. I went home and opened the rest of the boxes from the basement. One after another. One box was labeled Ryan, 2001. Inside was a folder, report cards, drawings, birthday cards, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Inside was a note, written in my mother's handwriting. Emma, if you ever find this,
I'm sorry.
We never told you the truth. We thought it would protect you. But secrets rot. We should have known better. Love, Mom. Below it was a police report. My heart dropped. Incident report, July 16, 1999. Location, 824 Green Elm Drive. Injured party, Kendra Smith. Report filed by Officer Dale Jefferson. Summary. Child sustained injury after falling down basement stairs. Alleged altercation between minor, Emma Harris, age 6, and victim. Witness testimony suggests physical object involved. Case closed at request of all parties. No criminal charges filed. Referred to Child Protective Services. Case status, sealed. My world cracked open. I was 6. I had been investigated. There was a case sealed away, like some buried time bomb. And my parents had chosen to erase it from my memory for my life. They made me forget. No wonder they got rid of the house. It wasn't just a sale. It was a purge. But the worst part? I still didn't remember. Even reading all of this, holding the evidence, I couldn't see it. There was just a blank. A wall in my memory. That night, I sat alone in my room, staring at the journal again. I read entry after entry, trying to piece together fragments of that summer. Then something odd caught my eye. A doodle in the margin. A staircase. A tiny figure falling. Another standing above them. And in the corner, drawn in crayon.
Don't tell.
Or they'll take you too. A memory hit me like a wave. I was standing in the basement. Kendra was crying. I was holding a flashlight. Dad's old metal one. She had called me a name. Pushed me first. and I swung. Not to hurt, just to scare. She slipped. The scream. The crack of her skull hitting the cement. My mother running in, gasping. My father grabbing me, whispering, "Don't say a word. You were never here." I collapsed on the floor, sobbing. My own mind had hidden it from me. Until now. I had hurt her. It wasn't murder, but it was still real. And my parents, they had covered it up. For me. But now, the damage was done. The house was gone. The memories were awake. And nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't know where I was driving. The night air blurred past me in streaks of light. Tears smeared my vision, and my hands clutched the steering wheel like it was the only thing anchoring me to the earth. That memory. It had felt buried under 1,000 pounds of silence. Now it screamed in my ears.
Kendra.
The flashlight.
The lie.
It didn't matter if it was intentional or not. I had caused it. And my parents, my own flesh and blood, hadn't just hidden the truth. They had hidden me from myself. I pulled into a dark, empty parking lot behind the grocery store. I just needed to breathe. For a moment, the world felt too big, too loud, too wrong. My pulse drummed in my ears. I pulled out my phone and dialed the only number that made sense. Dad. He picked up on the second ring. Emma? His voice was casual. Normal. Like everything was fine. I could barely speak. I remember. A pause. Long, cold. What do you mean? My voice cracked.
The flashlight. Kendra.
The stairs. I remember it all. The silence that followed was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. Then he sighed. Another long breath. We always knew it would come back. I met them both the next morning. At a quiet diner off the highway. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere they thought would keep the scene controlled. But there was no containing the storm in my chest. They sat across from me like strangers, Mom fidgeting with her napkin, Dad watching me like a time bomb. You should have told me, I said.
Dad spoke first.
You were a child. You didn't know what you were doing. I still don't know. I shouted, fists clenched on the table. I remember swinging something. I remember her falling. Then nothing. And you erased everything. Mom's voice was shaky. We didn't erase it. We protected you. The system would have eaten you alive. One wrong report, and I cut her off. You made me think I was crazy. For years, I wondered why I had black holes in my memory, why I had anxiety attacks in stairwells, why I couldn't trust myself. Dad finally looked up. We chose between justice and saving our daughter. I stared at him. That wasn't your choice to make. They tried to defend themselves. To justify the secrecy, the sale of the house, the hidden records, the therapy bills disguised as checkups. But I had stopped listening. I was watching their mouths move, but all I could hear was Kendra's scream echoing in my skull. I left without saying goodbye. I drove straight to Carol Smith's house. She opened the door cautiously, but when she saw me, eyes bloodshot, cheeks tear-streaked, she simply nodded and stepped aside. I thought you might come back, she said. I sat on her couch, knees trembling. I remember now, I said. It wasn't. I didn't mean to hurt her. She nodded again, slower this time. She told me that, you know. I blinked. What? Kendra, Carol whispered. She remembered too. At least, pieces. She always said it wasn't your fault. That she got mad first. That you were just scared. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Why didn't you ever tell me? Why didn't she? Carol looked down at her hands. Because we didn't want you to carry that burden. And, honestly, I didn't think it would help. I was angry for a long time, but I also saw the truth. I saw how young you both were. How scared. She was my best friend, I said softly. She still has the drawings you made together, Carol smiled. She keeps them in a box. Wants to give them to you one day. My breath caught. Can I see her? Carol paused, then shook her head gently. Not yet. She's not ready. But maybe soon. Later that night, I sat in my apartment staring at the police report again. My thumb hovered over the phone. A part of me wanted to call the police myself. To reopen the case. to confess. But then, would that heal anything? Would it bring peace to Kendra? Or just reopen a scar we were all finally learning to live with? I opened my laptop and did something else instead. I wrote everything down. All of it.
The lie.
The memory. The journal. The flashlight. The fall. The silence. I wrote the truth. And I sent it. To my parents. To Carol. To myself. I didn't get replies for a while. But when I did, the words were raw. Dad, we still don't know what the right thing was. We just loved you. Maybe we got it wrong. But we never stopped loving you. Mom, I'm sorry for stealing your voice. You deserve to know your own story. Carol, this won't erase what happened. But it's a start. And maybe one day, you'll come have coffee with Kendra. She remembers the lemonade, the chalk drawings, the flashlight, too. But she forgives you. The next week, I drove by the old house one last time. It looked so small now. The new owners had painted the shutters. There was a tire swing in the yard. Laughter spilled from the windows. It wasn't my house anymore. And maybe that was okay. It's strange how quiet things become after the storm. I expected the world to collapse when the truth came out. I expected people to leave.
For jobs to be lost. For someone to slam a door in my face.
But instead, the silence that followed was healing. Not the hollow silence of buried secrets, but the tender stillness of something finally aired out. Like a wound that, after so long, could finally breathe. I started therapy again. Real therapy. Not the kind my parents arranged to keep me normal, but the kind where I chose the therapist, told them the full story, and didn't leave anything out. It was hard. Some days, I cried more than I spoke. But little by little, I started to reclaim my memory. Not just the fragments of that day with Kendra, but the entire childhood I'd spent second-guessing myself. I began rebuilding my relationship with Carol. At first, it was just texts, then emails. Then one afternoon, we sat on her porch with hot tea between us and long pauses where pain used to live. She still draws, you know, Carol said, smiling as she glanced at the sketchpad beside her. Takes after you. She shouldn't, I said with a half-smile. I was all stick figures. Carol laughed, a real, easy sound. She says you always drew the sun with sunglasses. She never forgot that. I blinked back tears. I thought she'd hate me. She hated what happened, Carol said softly. But hate didn't stick. Not when she remembered the good parts. It was a few weeks later when I finally received a message that stopped my heart cold. From unknown number. I'm ready to talk. K. My legs nearly gave out. I stared at the message like it might vanish. I paced. I cried. I even laughed at one point, overwhelmed by the emotions flooding through me. But I didn't reply. Not immediately. Because I needed to be sure. Not that she was ready. That I was. I waited 3 days. Then I typed 2 words. Me too. We met in a botanical garden. Neutral ground.
Public.
Peaceful. She looked different, yet instantly familiar. Her eyes were still the same, bright, wide, and a little too good at reading me. We didn't hug. Not right away. We walked through rows of lilies and violets and silent benches, and for the first few minutes, neither of us spoke. Then, finally she said it. I remember that day. I swallowed hard. So do I. I was mean to you, she said. I called you names. I was mad because you wouldn't let me take your flashlight. It was stupid. I nodded. And I swung it at you. I didn't mean to hit you, but I did. She stopped walking and turned toward me. I fell. I don't blame you. My throat tightened. You should.
No, she said.
I blamed you for years. But blaming didn't make me feel better. Forgiving did. We sat on a bench beneath an oak tree. She pulled something from her bag. A stack of old, worn papers. Drawings. From our childhood. Thought you might want these. I held them like they were sacred. Sun with sunglasses. Stick figures holding hands. A flashlight drawn in yellow crayon, glowing too brightly. We talked for hours. Sometimes about the day everything broke. Mostly about the years we lost. And then about the years we still had ahead. Later that night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker like stars. I thought about everything that had happened. The lies, the silence, the buried memory, the accidental pain, the stolen home, the stolen truth. And still, somehow, I was healing. A part of me would always live in that old house. Not the house my parents sold without telling me, but the one with lemonade on the porch, sidewalk chalk drawings, late-night secrets, and the girl with wild curls who never judged me for who I was. That house, the one of memory, was still mine, and it always would be. Just before bed, I got one last message. From Dad. I know it's late, but I read what you wrote again, and I want to tell you something I never said before. You were brave that night. You've always been brave. I smiled, because maybe, just maybe,
He was right.